Much of Britain is brought to a standstill by the heaviest snowfall in 18 years, and there's more to come. From the Scilly Isles to Aberdeenshire, a blanket of snow covers the countryside. Despite the efforts of the gritters, many roads are left gridlocked. All 5 of London's airports shut down as snow covers the runways. In London, not a single bus ran this morning, giving drivers some downtime, but leaving commuters disgruntled.
Absolutely diabolical. There's no gritting on the road, there's nothing. We're like a third world country.
Fun, though, for the children, free to enjoy the snow as 3,000 schools close. We'll bring you a full weather forecast and the latest on the travel situation for tomorrow. Also tonight, the wave of strikes spreads in the row over foreign workers as talks seem to be in deadlock. And how in these tough economic times, American football could have something to teach the Premier League.
On BBC London, transport chiefs in the capital admit it wasn't our finest hour as millions have a nightmare commute. And showstopper how the heavy snowfall closed most West End theatres.
Good evening. The heaviest snowfall for 18 years brought many parts of the UK to a standstill today. Major airports closed runways or shut down altogether. Trains and roads were disrupted, leaving thousands stranded. An estimated 1 in 5 people stayed at home instead of going to work, and over 3,000 schools shut their doors. In a moment, we'll be looking at the areas affected by today's heavy snowfall. The transport chaos that hit the roads, rail network and the airports. We'll be reporting live from across Britain, and we'll be looking ahead to what we can expect for tomorrow morning's commute. But first, let's join Robert Hall, who's in Easton in Hampshire. Robert.
Well, Fiona, today may have provided an adventure for children, but that certainly wasn't the case for many of their parents. Let's take this region as an example. By the middle of this morning, Hampshire and Isle of Wight police had received 3,000 calls for help, 400 of them to accidents. On an average Monday, for example, the Monday of last week, they would have got 20 such calls. The snow was expected, but it arrived during the rush hour. It couldn't have been a worse time. A snapshot of Monday misery and a taste of what was in store. Rush hour overload on the M25 reduced to a crawl by a series of lane closures, accidents and breakdowns. In London, early risers had emerged to this. Whether by rail, by tube or by road, normal service was impossible. Those who didn't turn back may well have regretted their decision. Buses had already been confined to their depots. In some areas it was simply too dangerous to operate, leaving drivers to find other ways of filling their time. London's mayor said the capital had done all it could to keep transport moving.
I think we've done pretty well in what are absolutely extraordinary circumstances. I mean, there's no doubt about it, this is the right kind of snow, it's just the wrong kind of quantities.
In the capital and beyond, the gritting teams had been working through the night, but their first priorities were major routes. For much of the day, side roads remained treacherous, journeys long and often daunting. I joined RAC patrolman Richard Fitzwater in the Thames Valley. Motoring organisations had reported hundreds of calls. What's the difference in the pattern of calls that you'd expect to get?
We'd certainly get more call-outs on a day like today with weather-related concerns.
Which include what?
For instance, not being able to see the curb as you're going around a corner and clipping the curb, possibly causing some suspension damage to the car, puncturing a tyre.
As the snow spread northwest, search teams recovered the bodies of 2 brothers from Mount Snowdon. They'd been reported missing last night and had fallen 300 metres whilst climbing. The number of weather-related injuries has stretched medical services. Some operations and clinics were cancelled, and in London, managers appealed for all available medical staff to report for work.
We have reduced the number of patients coming in for planned surgery, but taken those who need urgent operations and carried on business as usual.
In northeastern England and across affected areas, schools and colleges closed their doors. More than 3,000 made that decision today. Many closures will extend into tomorrow.
I'm pulling my sled for Antarctica!
A bonus for pupils for whom this is a huge adventure. In York, where some schools did open, the blanket of snow offered a chance to use alternative transport. In Brighton, more unaccustomed to the Siberian chill, empty streets became a huge playground.
We've not seen it like this for years.
My dad said we haven't had this much snow for 10 years.
That's right.
And it hasn't been snowing like this since I've been alive, really.
They couldn't get enough teachers in, so we're down here. Whereas they couldn't get in.
Tonight, police warnings and gloomy forecasts did appear to have deterred travellers. This is the M62 Trans-Pennine route. Temperatures remain below zero, heralding another long night for those struggling to keep the UK moving. Probably a wise decision on the Pennines, because the forecasters say they could get another foot of snow there overnight. The advice, it's probably worth repeating it again, the police have been saying it all day, don't travel unless you have to. If you do go out, take warm clothes in case the unexpected happens. Take a spade to help you out if the roads, as the cases here, are treacherous, and make sure your car is full of petrol. Those are the precautions everybody must take. Fiona.
Thank you very much. So could any of this have been avoided? After all, the snow had been forecast and there had been plenty of severe weather warnings, yet millions faced disruption. Over 3,000 schools have been closed, 6.4 million people couldn't get to work, according to one estimate, and the total cost of the economy is thought to be £1.2 billion. Here's our transport correspondent, Tom Simons.
A very British snowstorm. It starts falling and we grind to a halt. This time in the south, and London in particular, it's been worse than many can really remember.
Everything shuts down, it seems. Like the tube wasn't working, the buses weren't working, taxis weren't working, so wherever you are, you were stuck.
Absolutely diabolical. There's no gritting on the road, there's nothing. We're like a third world country.
Snow was forecast last Friday, and there's little evidence of a major failure to grit. It's always left to the last minute, so the salt's there when the snow falls, yet some may have blown away. And many drivers stayed at home, so there was little traffic grinding the snow and salt together, which helps. But either way, in London, they couldn't keep the buses running. It was the first time in recent history that all of London's buses have been halted. The service relies on local councils keeping local roads free of snow. And last night, amid treacherous conditions, the bus depots were simply snowed in.
These are really extreme circumstances and extreme conditions. Anybody who stepped outside their front door this morning would have said, oh, this is bad. These are very deep snow.
Airports failed to cope with it too. Heathrow has 58 snowplows, but at one point both its runways were closed. They didn't know where to put it all. This Cypriot jet taxied off the taxiway. The pilot couldn't see where it ended and the grass began. At airports across Britain, this was Luton, thousands of passengers have been disrupted. It's pretty clear we're not geared up to carry on through snow like this. Of course, some countries just do it better. Over to Rupert Wingfield Hayes in Moscow.
Well, here the temperature today is -20, which is why the Moscow River is completely frozen over. But Russians are used to this. In Moscow there are an army of people and strange contraptions that keep the streets clear. But also, every single Russian is very well prepared. Inside every Russian car is one of these, a big scraper and brush for the snow and ice. And this, washer fluid that goes down to -20. But most important are these, metal-studded snow tyres that mean you can drive on ice.
It's not an exact science. Even American parents sometimes have to keep the kids at home.
My children's school was cancelled today because of what? Some ice?
But could we do more to prepare and respond? The question is, would it be worth it?
We're not a Stockholm, we're not a Moscow, we're not a Budapest. But if we did want to prepare for this, it would mean a level of investment in making sure that points on railway lines don't freeze over, putting ploughs in the front of snow ploughs in the front of buses and trains. You can make investment like that, but I'm not convinced that the economic return stacks up.
Tonight, rail passengers struggled home. Many services south of London are suspended, others are delayed. There'll be an economic impact. But unless we decide to spend more on coping with the cold, we'll have to take the hit. Tom Simons, BBC News, Central London.